The Grand Assembly Hall of the Valtherian Empire was a monument to power, a cavernous space that strained the limits of perception. Its vaulted ceiling, so distant it seemed to hold a piece of the void itself, was inlaid with crystalline panels that captured and fractured the light of Valor Prime's three suns into a shimmering, ever-shifting aurora. The air hummed with a low, resonant frequency, the sound of the planet's heart, or perhaps just the immense power generators buried deep beneath the polished stone. Princess Lyanna stood beside her mother's obsidian throne, a statue of royal composure. Her ceremonial armor, a masterwork of artistry and threat, gleamed under the celestial light. Inside, however, she felt hollowed out, a vessel slowly filling with the cold dregs of resignation. Below her, arrayed in a sea of vibrant house colors and shimmering formal wear, were 417 nobles from 40 star systems. They were the finest bloodlines of the empire, each man radiating an aura of entitlement and colognes so expensive they probably accounted for a small moon's annual GDP. This was her third selection in 5 years. The first had been filled with a nervous, fluttering hope. The second, with a simmering frustration. This third, this was just a funeral for her prospects, dressed in the gaudy robes of tradition. She could feel her mother's displeasure like a change in atmospheric pressure. Queen Zavra's violet skin had darkened to a stormy indigo, a telltale sign of her rising temper. Her golden eyes, usually so piercing and discerning, now held the flat, dangerous heat of a star about to go nova. They swept over the assembled candidates, and Lyanna saw a few of the braver ones subtly adjust their stances, their gravitational stabilizers humming a fraction louder as they fought to maintain perfect posture in the hall's calibrated 1.2 standard gravity. "My daughter," Zavra's voice began, not loud, but amplified through neural resonance so that it vibrated in the very marrow of every person present. It was a sound that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the soul, or to the fear center of the brain. As the finest warrior of her generation, Lyanna's expression did not flicker. She had heard this overture before. She knew every note, every crescendo of pride and subsequent crash of disappointment. She has defended this empire with honor and skill that eclipse the deeds of legends, Zavra continued, her voice gaining a hard, sharp edge. She led the relief force that broke the siege at Kepler Station, saving millions. She held the line at the Crimson Gate against a force that outnumbered her fleet 3-1, with half her ships venting atmosphere and her own flagship's bridge exposed to vacuum. She did not flinch. She did not yield. The Queen's long, elegant fingers drummed a silent, impatient rhythm on the armrest of her throne. Each tap was a tiny, echoing verdict on the men below. She deserves a partner of equal strength, not just of muscle and bone, but of spirit. A partner of equal courage, who does not see her strength as a challenge to his own, but as the complement that makes them both greater. A few nobles in the front rows puffed out their chests, mistaking the description for an invitation. Lyanna felt a familiar, weary sadness. They heard the words, but they did not understand the music. They saw her victories, her command, her unbreakable will, and they either wanted to possess it as a trophy or were secretly terrified of it. Yet, year after year, Zavra's voice dropped, becoming quieter and infinitely more dangerous. I look upon the best our empire has to offer, and I see the same flaw. The same weakness festering beneath the finery. Sons of great houses, who boast of lineages that stretch back to the first expansion, but who flinch at the thought of standing beside a woman who casts a longer shadow than they ever will. The preening stopped. Spines that had been straight now found sudden, fascinating imperfections in the architecture of the distant ceiling. 100 pairs of eyes could not seem to meet the queen's gaze. Zavra rose from her throne. She was tall and formidable, and her movement seemed to draw the heat from the room. The temperature perceptibly dropped. So I will ask you directly, plainly, so that there can be no misunderstanding. Her voice, though quiet, now carried to the farthest corners of the hall. Is there no one here brave enough to court my daughter? Is there no one strong enough, in heart and will, to stand beside her? No one willing to love a warrior without fearing her strength? Is there no one here man enough to promise me grandchildren worthy of this throne? The silence that followed was absolute. It was not a peaceful quiet, but a dense, smothering thing, thick with the collective cowardice of 400 proud men. Lyanna watched it unfold like a slow-motion disaster. Lord Kaelin of House Calvilvan, who had boasted just yesterday of his prowess in the zero-G dueling rings, suddenly found the intricate embroidery of his ceremonial sash utterly captivating. A candidate from the Meridian cluster, famed for his family's exploratory grit, seemed to be conducting a deep theological study of his own boot tips. Another, from the core systems, mimed receiving a neural communique, his eyes glazing over with feigned concentration. It was the same. It was always the same. Pathetic. The word, spat from her mother's lips, was a sonic weapon that made several nobles physically recoil. The Empire's finest bloodlines, and not one of you has the courage to even meet my eyes. Lyanna's own heart felt like a stone in her chest. This was it, the final, humiliating confirmation. She was too much. The crown was too heavy, her victories too great, her shadow too long. She was destined to be the warrior queen who ruled alone, a monument to strength and solitude. And then, a voice cut through the silence. It wasn't loud, it wasn't booming, but it was clear, firm, and carried the unshakable calm of someone who had given orders in the screaming chaos of a burning starship. All do it. Every head in the hall turned in perfect, stunned unison. 417 holographic name markers swiveled above their owners' heads, a flock of disoriented birds. The sound had come from the back, from the diplomatic observer section, a cordoned-off area for non-Valtherian guests who were meant to be seen, not heard. A human stepped forward. He was tall for his species, but still stood a head shorter than most Valtherians present. He wore the formal dark blue dress uniform of the Earth Military Diplomatic Corps, the silver planets and stars insignia on his shoulder looking stark and simple against the vibrant, alien silks and metals around him. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running a nervous hand through it moments before standing. But his posture was straight, his shoulders squared, and his eyes were fixed not on the terrifying queen, but on Lyanna. A wave of shocked murmuring rippled through the hall. A human. It was unthinkable. It violated decades of protocol, centuries of tradition, and several unspoken laws of cosmic order. Lyanna's composure, ironclad for years, fractured. Her silver eyes widened for a single, unguarded second before she could lock her emotions away again. But it was too late. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild, frantic rhythm she hadn't felt since her first combat drop. The subtle bio-monitors woven into the silk under her armor would be flashing. Alerts to the palace physicians. She knew him. Queen Zavra's golden eyes narrowed, her focus pinning the human to the spot like a specimen. You. Identify yourself. Commander Marcus Webb, Your Majesty. He began to walk down the central aisle, his stride steady and purposeful. The click of his standard-issue dress shoes on the polished stone floor was a foreign, rhythmic counterpoint to the silent hall. Earth military liaison to the Valtherian Third Fleet. I've had the honor of serving under Princess Lyanna's command for the past 2 years. You are not Valtheran, Zavra stated, her tone implying this was a catastrophic oversight on his part. A ghost of a smile touched Marcus's lips. No, Your Majesty, I am not. You hold no noble title. You possess no lands. Your bloodline is unknown to us. What possible qualification could you have to court the crown princess of the Valtherian Empire? Marcus reached the base of the throne dais. He had to tilt his head up to meet the queen's gaze, but he did so without a trace of fear. Lyanna noticed that detail, because most planetary governors couldn't manage it. With respect, Your Majesty, he said, his voice calm and clear. You asked for someone brave enough and strong enough. You asked for someone willing to stand beside a warrior without fearing her shadow. You did not specify species, bloodline, or title in the requirements. Behind him, Lord Kalen made a sound like he was choking on his own outrage. You dare. Let him speak, Zavra commanded, her voice slicing through the noble's protest. She leaned forward slightly, the bioluminescent patterns etched into her throne pulsing with a brighter, more interested light. You claim these qualities, human. Prove it. Marcus turned then, fully facing Lyanna. He stood 3 steps below her, looking up at where she stood, tall and formidable in her armor. He saw the micro-shield generators creating a faint shimmer around her shoulders, the neural interface ports gleaming like quicksilver at her temples. He saw the woman who had once dragged his wounded body across 200 meters of hostile terrain under enemy fire. Your Highness, he began, and the hall's acoustics carried his every word, every nuance, to the farthest observer. I was there at the Battle of Crimson Gate. I was on the command deck of the Starfall when the hull was breached. I saw you, with the air screaming out into the void and alarms blaring that the ship was lost, give the order to seal the blast doors, trapping yourself on the bridge with a skeleton crew to give the rest of us time to evacuate. The hull was utterly silent. This was not the sanitized, heroic version from the official reports. I've watched you make decisions that would break admirals twice your age, he continued, his voice softening, becoming more personal, cutting through the formal space between them. I've seen you sacrifice 3 ships to save 30, and then I've watched you sit alone in the observation deck at 0300 hours, memorizing the names of every soul lost on those 3 ships from the casualty reports. I've seen you grieve for every single one. Liana's breath caught in her throat. He wasn't supposed to know about that. No one was. She had protocols. She had firewalls. But he had seen. He had been watching. And then, Marcus's voice grew stronger, filled with a conviction that resonated in the vast space. I've watched you stand before your remaining crew the next morning, your back straight, your voice steady, and give them a reason to believe victory was still possible when every tactical projection said we were already dead. You didn't just command our ships, Princess. You commanded our hope. The silence in the hull was now a living thing, holding its breath. I know exactly who you are, Marcus said, and the words were not a challenge, but a revelation. Not the princess, not the heir, not the tactical prodigy they teach at the military academies. I see Liana, the woman who argues with supply officers to get fresh fruit for the enlisted crews. The woman who personally visits every wounded soldier in the med bay, regardless of their rank or species. The woman who takes the weight of every failure onto her own shoulders, even when it belongs to a dozen different factors beyond her control. Liana felt a tremor run through her hands. She curled them into fists, her nails biting into her palms. No one had ever seen that. The woman who is, without question, the most brilliant, fierce, and terrifyingly competent person I have ever met, Marcus finished, a small, wry smile finally touching his lips. And in the best possible way. He turned back to the Queen. You ask if I'm brave enough. Your Majesty, I'm standing in the Grand Assembly Hall, declaring my intentions toward your daughter in front of 400 nobles who could probably have my commission revoked with a strongly worded memo. Several of them look like they're considering challenging me to personal combat, which, given that I'm human and have about 60% of Valtherian muscle density, would be spectacularly ill-advised. So yes, I'm either brave, or spectacularly stupid. My performance reviews tend to cite both. A startled laugh escaped from the diplomatic section. It was followed by another, and then a ripple of genuine, if nervous, amusement from the military observers' gallery. But I've spent 2 years, Marcus said, his gaze returning to Liana, his expression turning earnest, watching men, Valtherian men from houses that predate human civilization, treat you as either a political prize to be won or a threat to their fragile egos. I'm tired of it. Tired of watching someone so extraordinary be told, in 1,000 subtle ways, that she is too much for their delicate constitutions. Lord Kaelin's face was a spectacular shade of furious purple, his bioluminescent markings flickering with what Liana knew to be outrage crimson. So, yes, Your Majesty, Marcus concluded, squaring his shoulders again. I'm brave enough. I believe I'm strong enough, in the ways that actually matter. And I am absolutely willing to stand beside your daughter. If she will have me. He turned his full attention back to Liana, and for the first time, the confident facade cracked, revealing the raw, vulnerable hope beneath. Your Highness, I realize this is possibly the most presumptuous and career-endingly foolish thing I have ever done. And I once rerouted a dreadnought to rescue a stranded survey team without waiting for authorization. If you want me to stand down, say the word. I will return to my post, submit my resignation, and become a cautionary tale in the Earth diplomatic corps training manuals for the next century. Lyanna stared at him. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. She could feel the weight of 400 stares, her mother's calculating gaze, the fate of empires potentially balancing on her next word. But in that moment, she didn't see the political implications. She saw the man who had never flinched when she gave an order. The man who had shared a silent, grim cup of coffee with her after the Kepler station relief, when the adrenaline had faded and the cost had become clear. The man who saw the person behind the crown. Slowly, deliberately, she descended the 3 steps of the dais. Her armor whispered with the movement, the micro-shield generators creating faint ripples in the air. When she stopped in front of him, their height difference was undeniable. She towered over him, her presence an aura of command and power. You realize what this means, Commander? She asked, her voice low, though the acoustics captured every syllable. You will be a target. Every slighted noble house will see you as an insult. There will be political games, formal challenges, and unfortunate accidents involving malfunctioning airlocks. Marcus didn't blink. Sounds like a standard Tuesday, Your Highness. Last month, someone, accidentally, tried to poison my coffee because I requisitioned a transport shuttle their nephew wanted for a joyride. A genuine smile, small but real, touched Lyanna's lips. You're serious about this? Completely, he said, his voice dropping to match hers, for her alone. I've admired you since the day you pulled me from that wrecked shuttle on Cygnus Beta. The command channel was screaming to abandon the position, but you came yourself. You dragged me, a human you barely knew, through enemy fire and didn't leave me behind. You didn't leave anyone behind. That's who you are. And I'm in love with you, Lyanna. I have been for a long time. I'm just tired of watching from the sidelines. The gasp that went through the hull was audible. A human, declaring love for the crown princess. It was unprecedented. It was scandalous. Lyanna's silver eyes shimmered. Through her neural interface ports, a faint, telltale bioluminescence pulsed, a Valkyrian sign of intense emotion she usually suppressed. He loved her. He saw the loneliness, the weight, the constant performance, and he loved her anyway. You love me, she repeated, the words feeling foreign and wonderful on her tongue. Yes, he said simply. And I know you might not feel the same. This is already more than I had any right to hope for. But if there's even a chance. Lyanna didn't let him finish. She closed the small distance between them, her hands coming up to frame his face. She kissed him. It wasn't a gentle, tentative kiss. It was decisive, fierce, and full of a years-long pent-up hope. It was a claiming, an answer, and a declaration of war against every expectation that had ever bound her. The hall erupted. Outrage, shock, a few scattered cheers from the military section, the sound of a ceremonial headdress hitting the floor. When she pulled back, her hands rested on his shoulders, her neural ports glowing like tiny stars. "I've been waiting," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for someone to see me. Just me. And you step forward when every qualified candidate steps back." She laughed, a sound of pure, unburdened joy. "So, is that a yes?" Marcus asked, dazed, his lips still tingling. "That is a yes," Lyanna confirmed. "The rest, we'll figure out together. But my mother," she added, her smile turning wry, "is going to test you. Thoroughly. And probably painfully. Are you prepared for that?" Marcus glanced up at Queen Zavra, who watched them with an expression that blended sharp calculation, grudging approval, and what might have been predatory amusement. The patterns on her throne had shifted to a color Lyanna's staff would later describe as intrigued orange with undertones of imminent trial by combat. "Honestly, no," Marcus admitted, turning back to Lyanna. "But I'm willing to try. I should probably mention my survival instinct has a documented glitch. It's likely related to the same neurological condition that made me think this was a good idea." "I like him," Queen Zavra announced, rising to her feet. The hall fell into an instant, obedient silence. "Human," she said, descending the steps with fluid, lethal grace. "You have my daughter's acceptance. Now you must earn mine." She stopped before them, a formidable presence beside her daughter. "You claim to be strong enough to give me grandchildren worthy of this throne. Prove it. 3 trials. Combat, strategy, endurance. Pass them all, and you have my blessing to court the crown princess." She leaned in close, and Marcus could see the intricate, living light swirling beneath her skin. "Fail," she whispered, the word carrying through the entire hall, "and you will return to Earth in disgrace. Possibly in several small, neatly labeled containers. Do you accept these terms?" Marcus looked at Lyanna. Her silver eyes held his, and through them, he saw not a command, but a question. "Are you sure? And an offer. We can still walk away." He gave her the smallest of nods, an answer to both. He turned to the queen. "I accept." Zavra's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. "Good. We begin at dawn. Prepare yourself, Commander Webb. You have volunteered for the hardest challenge of your life." "A quick question, Your Majesty," Marcus said. "When you say dawn, are we using Valor Prime's 26-hour rotational cycle, or standard galactic time? I'd just like to know exactly how many hours I have to comprehensively regret my life choices." This time, the laughter that echoed through the Grand Assembly Hall was genuine and widespread. "Valor Prime Dawn," Zavra said, her eyes glinting. "You have 8 hours. Don't be late." Dawn on Valor Prime was not a gentle affair. It was a sudden, triumphal entry as 3 suns breached the horizon in near-perfect sync, flooding the Imperial training grounds with overlapping light that cast confusing triple shadows across the dusty red earth. Marcus stood in the center of the vast combat arena, feeling the strange light on his skin, and wondered if his will covered death by royal proving ritual. The observation platforms were crowded with nobles, military officials, and diplomats. Queen Zavra occupied the central platform, having exchanged her ceremonial robes for form-fitting tactical armor that suggested she hadn't always been a ruler who watched from the sidelines. Lyanna stood beside her, a statue of royal composure, but Marcus could see the tension in the line of her jaw, the white-knuckled grip she had on the railing. The combat trial, Zavra's voice boomed across the grounds, will test your adaptability and tactical thinking under pressure. Commander Webb will face 3 opponents simultaneously in a holographic environment that will shift terrain and introduce random obstacles every 90 seconds. 3 Valtherian warriors entered the arena from the opposite side. They were clad in light combat armor and carried plasma staves. They moved with the fluid, powerful grace of their species, each one looking like he could dismantle a tank with his bare hands. They were the elite of the elite. The holographic projections will simulate physical obstacles, the Queen continued. But your opponents are quite real. Surrender is permitted. Medical teams are standing by. Death is discouraged, but not, technically, impossible. She paused. Begin when ready. Question. Marcus called up, shielding his eyes from the low suns. When you say, discouraged, are we talking, strongly worded memo, discouraged, or, court-martial, discouraged? I just want to calibrate my risk assessment. Don't die, Commander, Lyanna's voice cut in, clear and firm. I would consider it poor form on our first official day of courtship. Right, no dying. Top of the objectives list. He gave her a quick, reassuring smile he didn't fully feel. The holographic environment activated with a low hum. The arena dissolved, replaced by a chaotic asteroid field. Chunks of rock, semi-tangible through the projectors, materialized around them. The gravity fluctuated wildly, mimicking the unpredictable pull of a debris zone. Marcus's stomach lurched. The 3 warriors moved, instantly, spreading out with flawless coordination to flank him. Marcus didn't wait. He ran, not away, but toward the largest holographic asteroid, diving behind it as a plasma strike scorched the ground where he'd been standing. The human runs. One of the warriors called out, his voice dripping with contempt. Tactical repositioning, Marcus corrected, his voice slightly strained as the gravity pulled him sideways. Running implies a lack of dignity. He used the shifting momentum to slide under a sweeping staff strike, coming up inside the warrior's guard. He wasn't strong enough for a direct blow, so he didn't try one. Instead, he grabbed a chunk of semi-solid holographic rock and hurled it at the warrior's helmet visor. It wasn't enough to hurt him, but it disrupted his sensors for a critical second. Marcus drove his elbow into the armor's knee joint, targeting the weak point at the articulation. The warrior grunted and stumbled, but his backhand swing caught Marcus across the ribs. The world exploded in white-hot pain. He flew backward, skidding across the arena floor. Definitely real. Medical teams will be earning their pay today. The environment shifted again. The asteroids vanished, replaced by a zero-gravity void. Marcus's stomach tried to exit through his throat as his boots lost contact with the floor. The Valtherians, however, activated gravitational anchors on their armor, keeping them firmly oriented. "This seems unfair," Marcus gasped, tumbling end over end. "Any chance of a time-out for the gravitationally impaired?" "Adapt or fail, Commander," Zavra's voice was cool from the observation platform. "Fine. Adapt." He stopped fighting the spin and used it, grabbing a passing holographic support beam to redirect his momentum straight toward the nearest warrior. He collided with the larger man, wrapping his legs around the warrior's torso and clinging on like a remora. "This is either brilliant or deeply stupid," Marcus muttered, holding on as the warrior tried to shake him off. He reached around, found the control panel on the warrior's back, and deactivated the gravitational anchor. They both went tumbling, a chaotic whirl of limbs. The warrior, trained for disciplined, gravity-bound combat, was disoriented. Marcus, who'd endured months of zero-G training after a shuttle mishap, was merely nauseated. He used the 2 seconds of confusion to deliver a sharp, precise strike to the neural interface port at the base of the warrior's neck. It was a non-lethal pressure point, but it sent a jolt of disruptive energy through the Valtherian's system. The warrior went limp for a moment, and Marcus pushed off, sailing toward the next environmental hazard. The arena shifted a third time. A high-gravity planetary surface, nearly double standard. Marcus hit the ground like a sack of bricks, the impact jarring his already screaming ribs. Every movement was a Herculean effort. The Valtherians, with their denser bone and muscle structure, adjusted with only slight strain. Marcus forced himself to his knees, his vision spotting. Blood trickled from his nose. The 3 warriors approached, their plasma staves held ready. The fight was over. They knew it. He knew it. "You fought with spirit, human," the lead warrior said, almost respectfully. "Yield with honor." Marcus dragged himself upright, swaying. His body was a symphony of pain. But his eyes were still sharp. He saw it then. The holographic projectors in the floor were overworked, creating faint visual distortions in the air as they struggled to maintain the intense simulation. "They built the prison. They didn't think I'd use the walls." "I appreciate that," Marcus wheezed, wiping blood from his lip. "But I've got a very intimidating potential mother-in-law watching. And I think yielding would lead to a conversation I'd really rather avoid." "No offense, Your Majesty." "None taken," Lyanna called down, her voice tight. The warriors moved in for the final strike. Instead of meeting them, Marcus dropped flat, rolled with agonizing slowness, and slammed his fist into the access panel of the nearest holographic projector. It sparked violently, overloading. A feedback pulse shot through the network. The high-gravity environment flickered, vanished for 2 precious seconds, then slammed back on. 2 seconds was all he needed. He wasn't trying to attack the warriors. He was attacking the arena itself. He lunged for the next projector, overloading it too. The carefully controlled scenario dissolved into chaos. Gravity fluctuated wildly. Holographic terrain phased in and out of existence. The disciplined Valtherians, trained for order, faltered in the bedlam. Marcus, a veteran of a dozen technological failures and battlefield improvisations, felt a grim sense of familiarity. He used the shifting gravity to slide between the disoriented warriors, not to strike them, but to disable their equipment, shorting out power cells, tangling staffs, using the foam from a triggered fire suppression system to make the floor impossibly slippery. It wasn't a victory of strength. It was a victory of chaos. He turned their perfect, controlled test into a bar fight. Trial halt. Queen Zavra's voice cut through the din. Disable combat systems. The projectors died. The gravity stabilized. The foam stopped, leaving the four combatants standing in a sea of white, sparking suppressant, covered in the stuff and panting heavily. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor. A Valtherian physician scanned Marcus, her equipment emitting a chorus of disapproving beeps. 3 cracked ribs, a fractured wrist, severe contusions, and a mild concussion, she announced, stunned. "How are you conscious?" "Spite," Marcus gasped, missed the Queen's verdict. Zavra descended to the arena floor, her expression inscrutable. She surveyed the sparking projectors, the foam-drenched, embarrassed warriors, and the human being held together by sheer will and advanced medical scanners. "That," she said slowly, "was not traditional combat." "No, Your Majesty," Marcus agreed, wincing as the physician injected a painkiller. "But you specified adaptability and tactical thinking. You didn't say I had to win a fair fight." One of the Valtherian warriors, the one Marcus had used as a zero-G anchor, let out a short, sharp laugh. "He fought the environment, not us." "Unconventional, but effective," the lead warrior admitted, wiping foam from his face. "He turned our greatest advantage into a liability." Zavra studied Marcus for a long, silent moment. "You didn't win through strength." "I'm human, Your Majesty," Marcus said simply. "I was never going to win through strength. I could only win by making the fight so miserable and unpredictable that my opponent's greater strength became irrelevant. And by, destroying a significant portion of your projector network. I'll pay for the repairs. It might take me a few decades." Lyanna had reached his side, her composure finally broken, her hand coming to rest gently on his uninjured arm. "You disabled 3 of my mother's elite guards by breaking the arena." "Creative problem solving," he corrected, leaning into her touch. "How badly did I fail?" Queen Zavra's lips curved into something that was not a smile, but was certainly not a frown. "First trial. Passed, Commander. You demonstrated extreme adaptability, unconventional tactical thinking, and a willingness to use every tool at your disposal, even the ones not intended as weapons. These are qualities the Empire values." She paused. "You have also proven you are either fearless or have a profound death wish. Both can be useful. The physicians will repair you. Tomorrow, we test your mind. Try not to destroy the strategic simulation room." "No promises, Your Majesty," Marcus said, and then, As the painkillers and exhaustion finally overwhelmed him, he allowed the darkness to take him. The strategic trial was a 16-hour marathon of simulated fleet command that left Marcus's ego more bruised than his body. He faced scenarios of overwhelming force, diplomatic crises mid-battle, and betrayals from within. He passed, but only just, by employing human strategies that the Valtherian admirals found disturbingly pragmatic and occasionally reckless. He sacrificed ships they would have tried to save, and saved worlds they would have ridden off. The debrief was a symphony of grudging admiration and pointed criticism. Now, 3 days after his world-changing declaration in the Grand Assembly Hall, he stood in the bonding chamber. This was the heart of the palace, a circular room whose walls were alive with softly pulsing bioluminescent patterns, telling the ancient history of the Valtherian people in a language of light. The air was still and cool, smelling of ozone and something else. This was the third trial. Endurance. Queen Zavra stood with the royal physicians, their faces grave. The third trial tests a different kind of endurance, Commander. Not of the body, but of the spirit. The Valtherian bonding ritual creates a neurological bridge between partners. It allows for the sharing of emotions, surface thoughts, even physical sensations. For us, it is a natural, if intense, process. Her golden eyes fixed on him. For a human, we do not know. Our physicians cannot guarantee compatibility. They cannot guarantee your safety. The process could be merely painful, or it could cause permanent neurological damage. Your mind is not built for this. You can still withdraw, Lyanna said softly. She stood opposite him on the central platform, dressed in simple, comfortable robes instead of her armor. She looked more vulnerable than he had ever seen her. You have passed 2 trials. No one would question your courage if you stopped here. I would not question it. Would you? He asked, his voice gentle. I would understand, she whispered. This is different, Marcus. This is me, my mind, touching yours. If something goes wrong, I could hurt you. Permanently. Then we'll be careful, he said, offering her a small, steady smile. But I didn't step forward in that hall just to prove I could fight or command a fleet. I stepped forward for you. And if this bonding, this connection, is a part of being with you, then I'm not walking away from it. I'm all in, Lyanna. The look she gave him then was filled with such a torrent of emotion, fear, hope, love, terror, that it stole his breath. Begin the ritual, Queen Zavra commanded. Physicians, monitor for neural shock. If his brain activity shows signs of cascade failure, disconnect them immediately. Very reassuring pre-procedure talk, Marcus murmured. Lyanna extended her hands. He took them. Her skin was warmer than a human's, her grip firm yet gentle. Following the physician's quiet instructions, they leaned forward until their foreheads touched. He felt the subtle warmth of her neural interface ports against his skin. The technology in the room hummed to life, a resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate in his teeth. Then, the world dissolved. It was not a gentle merging. It was a tidal wave. A dam had broken in his mind, and through it poured Lyanna. Not her words, not her image, but herself. He felt the crushing weight of her loneliness, a vast, cold ocean she had been swimming in for years. He felt the exhaustion of constant performance, of never being able to show a moment of weakness. He felt the sharp sting of 1,000 subtle slights from nobles who feared her, the hollow ache of being worshipped as a symbol and never seen as a person. He felt the ghost of every soldier she had ever lost, their names etched into her memory like scars. And underneath it all, he felt a small, fragile, fiercely protected spark, hope. Hope that he was different. Hope that this connection might be real. And a terrifying, ferocious wave of protectiveness toward him. And joy, so bright it was almost painful. And fear, pure and primal, that she would lose him, break him, in this very room. Marcus. Her thought voice was a panicked cry in his mind. Your pain. I can feel it. Your neural pathways. They're not meant for this. I'm pulling back. No. He pushed the thought back, clinging to the connection even as his own mind screamed in protest. It felt like his synapses were on fire, like his consciousness was being stretched on a rack. Stay. I'm staying. Don't pull back. You're in agony. I've had worse. The lie was instantly transparent to her. Liar. Her thought was filled with anguish. This is breaking you. His vision was whiting out. The physical world was gone. There was only the storm of her consciousness and the shattering of his own. But he held on. He focused not on the pain, but on the emotions he was sending back to her. His love for her, simple and unwavering. His awe at her strength. His determination to be worthy of her. And his absolute, unshakable certainty that she was worth any pain, any risk, any trial. You were worth this, he thought, pouring every ounce of his being into the message. You are worth everything. He felt her receive it. Felt the shock of it, the wonder. And then, something miraculous happened. His human brain, so different, so fragile, began to adapt. It wasn't a graceful process. It was a desperate, brutal forging of new pathways, a biological refusal to be incompatible. The pain didn't vanish, but it receded, transforming from a world-ending fire into a constant, manageable ache. The bond stabilized, not as a smooth, Valkyrian connection, but as a raw, powerful, and permanent thread between them. He could feel her presence in his mind. Not an invasion, but a companion. A quiet hum of another soul sharing his space. When they finally separated, physically and mentally exhausted, the thread remained. A conduit for emotion, for fleeting surface thoughts. It would take time to learn to control it, to build filters, but it was there. They were connected. Queen Zavra watched them, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She saw the tear tracing a path through the bioluminescent markings on her daughter's cheek. She saw the way Marcus swayed on his feet, his face pale but his eyes clear and fixed on Lyanna with a look of utter devotion. Third trial. Complete, Zavra declared, her voice losing its edge for the first time. Commander Webb, you have proven your courage, your strategic mind, and your capacity to bond with my daughter despite every biological impediment. You have my blessing to court the crown princess." A faint, genuine smile touched her lips. "Try not to die in the immediate future. I've invested considerable time and resources in testing you. It would be wasteful." "I'll do my best, Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. Then he blinked. "And, through the bond, I can feel that you're actually amused by this. Much more than you're letting on." Zavra's eyebrows rose. "The bond is stronger than anticipated. Interesting. That will make palace functions significantly more entertaining." Lyanna let out a watery laugh, the sound echoing with joy through their new connection. "Mother, you could just say you approve." "I could," Zavra agreed, turning to leave. "But where is the fun in that?" She paused at the chamber entrance. "Welcome to the family, Commander Webb. You've earned your place." Her gaze shifted to her daughter. "Try to keep him from starting any unnecessary wars." "I make no promises," Marcus said. "I've seen her tactical planning sessions. She has a real appreciation for calculated aggression." "I know," Zavra said, and this time her smile was wide and real. "She gets it from me." When they were finally alone, the silence in the bonding chamber was a comfortable one. They stood together, simply feeling the strange, new intimacy of shared consciousness. "So," Marcus said softly, "successful courtship declaration." "Moderately successful," Lyanna agreed, stepping closer and resting her head against his shoulder, careful of his injuries. "You only nearly died 3 times. By Valthyrian standards, that's practically a fairy tale." He wrapped his arms around her, feeling her warmth, her solid reality, and through the bond, her profound relief and dawning joy. "I can feel what you're feeling," he murmured in wonder. "I know," she said, her voice muffled against his uniform. "And I can feel your nervousness about the fact that I can feel your feelings about feeling my feelings. That's going to get confusing." "Probably," she agreed, holding him tighter. "But we'll figure it out together." Somewhere in the palace, nobles were recalibrating their political strategies. On Earth, diplomats were drafting hysterical reports about an unprecedented alliance. Across the Empire, the news was spreading like stellar radiation. But in the quiet of the bonding chamber, a human commander who had dared to step forward held the princess who had chosen to step down to meet him. And through the fragile, impossible, wonderful connection between their minds, they both felt the same profound truth. Sometimes, courage isn't about being the strongest or the most qualified. Sometimes, it's just about being the one who is brave enough to love, and to be loved, exactly as you are. And sometimes, that is more than enough.